Young millionaire married a homeless girl to escape an arranged marriage. Unaware, she once saved him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain was relentless that night in Seattle cold, silver needles slicing through the neon light that flickered over the Alberb Hotel's parking lot. Cars came and went in flashes of red and white, but Lucas Alberb stood motionless beneath the awning, his black suit drenched, his jaw tight. Inside, the engagement party was still roaring champagne, laughter, the sound of people congratulating him for a wedding he never wanted. His mother's words still echoed in his head. Marry Veronica, or the board will take everything from you. He had everything: money, status, power, but not a single piece of his life truly belonged to him. Then it happened. A faint cough drew his attention to the corner of the street. There, under a bus stop flickering with broken lights, sat a young woman wrapped in a torn blanket, her knees pulled close to her chest. Her hair clung to her face, her shoes soaked through. She was staring at the ground, whispering something he could not hear. She was invisible to the city. Everyone passed her without a glance. Everyone except him. For reasons he could not explain, Lucas started walking toward her. Each step splashed through puddles, until his Italian leather shoes were soaked and ruined. He did not care. The woman looked up in shock. "Do not come closer," she warned softly. "I am fine." Quote. Her voice trembled, but her eyes, dark, calm, and strangely familiar, did not. Lucas hesitated, then said something that would change both their lives. "If I pay for your rent, your food, everything you need, would you marry me tonight?" For a second, even the rain seemed to stop. Her mouth parted in disbelief. "You are joking." "I am not," he said. "I just need a wife temporarily." Quote. The wind howled between them, carrying away the absurdity of his words but leaving behind something heavier: curiosity. She blinked slowly, as if searching his face for a sign of cruelty. "Who are you?" "Someone desperate," Lucas answered, "and someone honest enough to admit it." The irony was brutal. A millionaire offering marriage to a homeless woman just to escape another one. Passers-by slowed down, whispering, some taking pictures. The absurd image spread like wildfire. A man in a $1,000 suit kneeling in the rain before a woman in soaked sneakers. Maria Solis did not move. Her hands clutched the blanket tighter, her mind racing. Maybe he was insane. Maybe it was a trap. Or maybe, just maybe, fate was playing one of its cruel jokes. "Why me?" she asked finally. Lucas's voice was steady but low. "Because you are the only person tonight who looked real." One. Lightning cracked across the sky, brightening his face for a brief second, enough for her to see that he was not lying. Something inside her shifted. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or the quiet pain of being ignored too long. She nodded once. Just once. "Fine. But if this is a joke, I walk away." "It is not a joke," Lucas said. "It is a deal." He took off his coat and placed it gently over her shoulders. The rain hissed against the fabric, but neither of them flinched. As they walked toward his car, people watched in silence, some horrified, some intrigued. A homeless girl marrying a millionaire? In one night? Now here is a question for you. Would you have said yes to a stranger like that, under the rain, even for one night? Because for Lucas Alberb and Maria Solis, that single yes was about to turn their world upside down. And somewhere, far away, fate smiled, because it had been waiting for this moment for 20 years. The rain did not stop that night. It followed them all the way from the bus stop to the downtown courthouse, as if the sky itself wanted to witness what they were about to do. Inside, the hallways were silent, except for the squeak of wet shoes and the hum of fluorescent lights. Lucas Alberb walked beside Maria Solis, his expression unreadable. He had made hundreds of business deals, but never one like this. The courthouse clerk looked up from her desk, confused when she saw the two of them standing side by side, one in a $1,000 suit, the other in a borrowed coat still dripping from the rain. "Marriage license?" the clerk asked, arching a brow. "Yes," Lucas replied simply. His voice did not waver. Maria looked down at the form on the counter. Her fingers trembled as she held the pen. The question that had been circling her mind since he approached her under the rain finally slipped out. "Why are you doing this? You do not even know my name." "I do now," he said, "and that is enough." When she signed her name, something inside her chest tightened. It was not love, not fear, but a strange pull like stepping into a story she could not control. 20 minutes later, under the dim light of an almost empty courtroom, a tired judge looked at them over his glasses. "Do you both agree to this union?" Lucas nodded. "Yes." Maria hesitated, then whispered, "Yes." "Coquon." The gavel came down with a sharp crack. It echoed across the room, loud and final. As they walked out, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Lucas handed her a small envelope cash, a new ID, and a hotel keycard. "Until the paperwork is finalized, you will stay here," he said. "After that, you will move into my penthouse. There are a few public events coming up. We will need to appear believable." "Believable?" she repeated, half smiling. "Right, because this is not real. Close. It will look real," he answered. "That is all that matters." The next morning, the city awoke to headlines that would ignite gossip across social media. Tech millionaire marries mysterious woman in rainstorm wedding. At Alberb Industries, reporters swarmed the lobby. The boardroom buzzed with quiet panic. Lucas ignored every question, walking straight to the elevator. He was used to people talking, they always did. Meanwhile, Maria stood in the mirror of her hotel room, staring at her reflection. The coat he had given her was neatly folded on the chair. She touched the marriage ring on her finger, unsure whether it felt heavy or hollow. Later that afternoon, Lucas arrived to take her to his residence. The ride through the city was quiet, except for the sound of rain tapping softly against the window. She caught glimpses of his world-towering glass buildings, chauffeurs, private security. It felt like another planet. When they reached the penthouse, she froze. The view alone could have been a movie backdrop, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire skyline, marble floors that reflected the city lights. "This is where you live?" she asked quietly. "For now," he replied. She walked slowly around the living room, afraid to touch anything. The silence stretched until she finally turned to him. "What happens now?" Lucas opened a black folder and placed it on the glass table. Inside was a typed document with 6 lines, the contract. He read each rule aloud, his tone detached but precise. "No real affection, no shared bedroom. Appear together at 5 public events. Maintain confidentiality. Respect each other's privacy. And the last one, no tears." Maria's lips curved into a faint, ironic smile. "No tears," she repeated. "You make it sound like a business merger." He met her eyes. "That is exactly what it is." For a long second, neither spoke. Then Maria reached for the pen and signed. "If this is the game, I will play it," she said. "But you should know something, Lucas Alberb. I do not break easily." He closed the folder, hiding a flicker of surprise. "Neither do I," he said quietly. As she looked out at the skyline, rain tracing soft rivers down the glass, a thought crossed her mind that she could not silence. This man was offering her the strangest deal of her life, but maybe, just maybe, it was her only chance to start over. Now let me ask you something. If you had to choose between pride and survival, would you have signed that contract too? The following morning, sunlight spilled across the marble floor of the penthouse like melted gold. For the first time, Maria Solis woke up in a bed that did not shake from passing trains or leak when it rained. Still, she did not feel comfortable. The silence was too clean, the sheets too perfect. She sat up, unsure whether she was allowed to move, to breathe, to belong. From the kitchen came the low hum of a coffee machine. Lucas Alberb stood by the counter in a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, pouring black coffee into a glass mug. He looked like a magazine photograph, flawless, distant, almost unreal. "You do not have to stay in the guest room all day," he said without turning around. "I do not want to break any rules," Maria replied. "You listed 6 of them." Lucas half smiled. "Do not worry, there is no penalty for curiosity." He handed her a mug, the heat surprising her cold fingers. She noticed a faint scar near his wrist, shaped like a lightning mark. Before she could ask, he had already turned away. Over the next few days, she followed his world from a quiet distance. Every morning, Lucas left precisely at 7, his driver waiting downstairs. Every evening, he returned at 8, sometimes with phone calls that stretched past midnight. He barely ate, barely spoke. Once when she brought him a tray of food, he murmured, "You do not have to do that." She answered softly, "Maybe I want to." The apartment was a museum of order. Sleek furniture, no family photos, not even a misplaced pen. It was as if he had erased every trace of life except work. And yet, behind the glass and steel, Maria saw glimpses of someone human, a man who sometimes stood too long at the window, watching the city like it might disappear. One evening, Lucas arrived home earlier than usual. He found her sketching by the large window, a pencil moving gently over paper. She froze when she realized he was watching. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "Something I do not want to forget," she said, flipping the page before he could see. That was the first time he laughed, not mockery, but something real, unguarded. "You might want to get used to forgetting. In this house, memories do not last long. Maybe that is your rule number 7, she said quietly. Days later came their first public appearance. Lucas had warned her about the event, a charity dinner hosted by his company. Stylists came to prepare her, dressing her in a simple black gown that fit like it had been made for her. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. At the event, flashbulbs exploded as soon as they entered. Lucas slipped his hand over hers, firm but protective. Cameras captured the image instantly, the new Mrs. Alberb. She smiled politely, though her heart pounded. People stared. Some whispered. The same reporters who once chased him for interviews now turned their attention to her. During dinner, an older investor leaned forward, smiling with false sweetness. "So, Mrs. Alberb, where did you two meet?" Lucas glanced at her, giving her the space to answer. Maria lifted her chin, voice calm. "Under the rain. Sometimes, that is where the truth hides." Laughter spread across the table, though not all of it kind. Yet when Lucas looked at her, his expression had softened, half admiration, half disbelief. After the event, inside the car, silence filled the air between them. Maria stared out the window, city lights streaking past like comets. "You handled them well," he said finally. "I have been looked down on my whole life," she replied. "It is easy when you no longer care." Lucas did not answer. He only reached over and adjusted the heater so the warmth reached her side of the car. As the night folded into quiet, a thought crept into Maria's mind, one she tried to ignore. Maybe this arrangement was not only saving him, maybe it was saving her too. "Now, I have a question for you. If you had to act like someone you are not, just to survive in a world that does not see you, would you do it? Or would you rather walk away and stay invisible?" Days turned into weeks, and the contract between Lucas Alberb and Maria Solis began to shape their strange routine. Every morning, the elevator doors opened to the rhythm of Lucas leaving for work, crisp suit, phone in hand, always in control. Every evening, he returned to the quiet hum of the penthouse, where Maria had already cooked dinner but pretended not to wait for him. He never asked her to, and she never admitted that she wanted to. It was easier to keep things unspoken, but the line between pretending and feeling started to blur. Maria had learned the rhythms of his life, the way he loosened his tie exactly 3 minutes after walking through the door. The faint sigh when he finally sat down, the soft habit of glancing toward the window before he spoke. One night, she left a second cup of tea on the table beside him. He looked at it, then at her, puzzled. "You do not drink tea," he said. "I do tonight," she replied. He said nothing, but his lips twitched slightly, almost like a smile. Later, when she passed by his office, she noticed sketches on his desk, drawings, not business graphs. One showed the outline of a bridge, rain falling over it. The strokes were sharp yet oddly emotional. "I did not know you drew," she said. He shrugged. "My father used to. I stopped when he died. This one just happened." "It is beautiful," Maria whispered. He looked at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice, and for a moment the air between them shifted, no longer CEO and guest, but two people with ghosts in their pasts. That weekend, Lucas took her to a charity event at a modern art gallery. His assistant had arranged everything, from her dress to her hair, yet when Maria stepped into the hall, all the polished guests turned their heads. She did not look like the others. Her beauty was not loud but quiet, real. People whispered behind champagne glasses. One woman muttered. She was a nobody before him. Lucas heard it. Without hesitation, he placed his hand on Maria's back and said clearly, "That nobody happens to be my wife." The murmurs stopped. Maria's chest tightened, and she turned to him, eyes wide. "You did not have to say that," she murmured. "Yes," he replied softly. "I did." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of lights, conversation, and stolen glances. She watched him navigate the crowd with quiet strength, never showing weakness, never breaking the illusion. But when they left the gallery, his mask cracked just enough for her to see something real: loneliness. In the car, neither spoke. The city slid by like a film reel of other people's lives. Finally, Maria broke the silence. "Do you ever get tired of being perfect?" He looked out the window, his reflection flickering in the glass. Perfection is just another way to hide. Gumber. When they arrived home, Lucas stepped out first, holding the umbrella over her head. The rain had returned, soft and steady. For the first time, she did not flinch away from it. She let the drops fall against her skin, the coolness washing over her face. Inside, the lights were low. Lucas poured himself a glass of water, then glanced at her. "You handled the gallery well," he said. "Most people would have broken under that kind of scrutiny." Quote, "Most people have not lived through worse," she replied. He nodded, thoughtful. The tension in his shoulders eased. "You are stronger than you look, Maria. And you are lonelier than you pretend, Lucas." Their eyes met. Neither moved. The clock ticked softly between them, marking the quiet beginning of something neither dared to name. As Maria went to her room, she paused at the door, looking back at him still standing in the dim kitchen light. Maybe the contract was working too well. Maybe they had learned to play their roles perfectly, so perfectly that even they no longer knew where the pretending ended. The following week brought the biggest test of their arrangement so far. The annual Alburb Industries Gala, an event attended by investors, politicians, and half of Seattle's elite, was only days away. Every headline teased it as the first official appearance of Mr. and Mrs. Alburb. Maria Solis stared at herself in the mirror as the stylist pinned her hair. She had worn 1,000 borrowed faces in her life: worker, volunteer, wanderer, but never this one. The black gown shimmered under the lights like liquid night. She almost did not recognize the woman looking back at her. From the doorway, Lucas Alburb observed quietly. "You look different," he said. "Different good or different bad?" she asked. He took a moment before answering. "Different real." Quote, "That evening, as the limousine pulled up to the ballroom entrance, camera flashes exploded like lightning. Paparazzi shouted their names, microphones thrust toward them. Lucas stepped out first, tall and composed, then turned to help her. His hand closed around hers, firm, protective, almost grounding. Inside, chandeliers glittered overhead, orchestral music filled the air, and hundreds of eyes followed their every move. Lucas led her through the crowd with steady confidence, introducing her to board members, clients, and family acquaintances. Maria smiled, nodded, and memorized every name, though her heart pounded against her ribs. At the main table, a woman in a diamond necklace leaned closer with a smile too sharp to be kind. "So, Maria, where exactly did you and Lucas meet? Some charity event, I suppose?" Maria hesitated, but Lucas's gaze found hers across the table, a silent reminder that this was their stage. She lifted her chin and said clearly, "Under the rain, sometimes the best things start with a storm." Laughter rippled through the table, some genuine, some not. But the line landed. Even the investors smiled. Lucas's lips curved slightly. For the first time that evening, he looked proud. Later, as speeches began, Maria slipped away to breathe. She stepped onto the terrace overlooking the city. The air outside was cool, heavy with the scent of rain again. Her reflection shimmered in the glass, half dream, half disbelief. Behind her, a familiar voice spoke. "You should be inside. People will notice." She turned. Lucas stood in the doorway, tie loosened, the city lights drawing silver in his eyes. "Let them notice," she said. "For once, I just want to be real, not perfect." Quote. He stepped closer, stopping a few feet away. "You were real in there, more than anyone else." For a moment, the world fell quiet. No cameras, no crowd, just them and the low hum of the city. Maria's heart raced. She wanted to thank him, or challenge him, or both. Instead, she whispered, "Why do you care so much what they think?" He looked down, a shadow crossing his face. "Because my whole life depends on what they think." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." Quote. They stood in silence, the wind brushing through her hair. Then, unexpectedly, Lucas reached out and tucked a loose strand behind her ear. The touch was brief, hesitant, but it burned through her composure. Inside, applause erupted as the charity auction ended. They both turned toward the sound, remembering where they were. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let us go before someone takes pictures." As they returned to the ballroom, Maria caught her reflection again, this time next to his. Two strangers pretending to be in love, yet their eyes betrayed something neither could explain. At the end of the night, when they finally escaped the noise and the flashbulbs, Lucas opened the car door for her. She hesitated, still hearing the applause echoing faintly behind them. "You did well tonight," he said once they were inside. "So did you," she replied. "For a man who hates pretending, you are very good at it." He smiled. "So are you." Quote. The car moved through the rain-slicked streets. For the first time since their deal began, the silence between them felt almost peaceful, dangerously peaceful. Maria leaned her head against the glass, eyes half closed. Maybe storms were not always meant to destroy. Maybe sometimes they washed away everything fake so something real could finally grow. Neither of them noticed that the cameras outside were still flashing, or that their image was already circulating online under the headline, "The Fake Couple Everyone Believes In." The following morning, the world woke up talking about them. News outlets ran stories, tabloids speculated, and social media overflowed with clips from the gala. In every photograph, Lucas Alberb and Maria Solis looked like the perfect couple, his hand steady on her back, her smile graceful and calm. What no one saw was the silence that followed when the cameras disappeared. Maria sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through headlines. Every post had a different version of their story. Some called her a mystery, others a gold digger, and a few even romanticized their rainstorm wedding. She sighed, setting the phone face down. Lucas entered the room, still half-dressed in his suit, adjusting his cufflinks. "Ignore it," he said, his tone practical. "They will find a new story by next week." She looked at him, eyebrows raised. "You sound like this happens all the time." "It does," he admitted. "The media builds idols and then breaks them for sport." Maria studied him for a moment. "And which are you right now? The idol or the broken one?" He did not answer. Instead, he reached for his briefcase. When he left for the office, the apartment felt too large, too quiet. Maria wandered through the rooms, stopping at the study where the walls were lined with blueprints and digital models. Among them was a single-framed photograph, a boy and a man fishing at a lake. The man's face was blurred, but the boy's grin was wide and familiar. Later that afternoon, Lucas returned unexpectedly early. He found her sitting on the floor near the photograph, sketchbook in hand. "What are you drawing this time?" he asked. "Not what?" she replied softly. "Who? You looked happy here." Lucas leaned against the doorframe. "That was before my father died. Everything after that turned into a competition." Maria closed her sketchbook carefully. "No one wins those kinds of competitions, Lucas." He looked at her, and something unreadable flickered in his eyes. That evening, the sky broke open with thunder. Rain fell heavy against the glass walls, echoing through the penthouse like a drumbeat. Maria was in the kitchen heating soup when the power flickered and went out. "Stay where you are," Lucas called from the living room. He moved toward the fuse box, his voice calm. But then she heard the sound of glass breaking, followed by a sharp hiss. "Lucas?" she called. "I am fine," he answered, but she could hear the strain in his voice. When she reached him, he was kneeling beside a shattered vase, blood on his hand. Without thinking, she grabbed a towel and pressed it against his palm. "You said no injuries, no emotions, no chaos," she muttered. He laughed quietly, even as he winced. "You remember the contract too well." "Someone has to," she said. When the lights finally came back, the two of them were still sitting on the floor, her hand over his, the towel turning crimson. The storm outside softened to a whisper. "Maria," Lucas said quietly, "what were you doing before? All of this?" She looked down. "I was helping at a shelter, until it burned down." He nodded slowly. "You lost everything." "Almost everything," she said. "Not my heart." For a moment neither spoke. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "I think I have been trying to find mine." Her breath caught. The way he looked at her open, unguarded, made the room feel smaller, warmer, dangerously real. She wanted to step back, but she could not. Outside, thunder rolled again, deep and low, like a reminder that nature always has the final word. She pulled her hand away first. "We should change the bandage," she said softly. Lucas nodded, his eyes still fixed on her. As she stood, the electricity hummed back to life, flooding the room with light. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same anymore. That night, Maria lay awake, listening to the rain and her own restless heartbeat. The contract was still on the desk in the next room, but somewhere between their rules and their silences, something had already broken. "And here is something I want to ask you. Have you ever looked at someone and realized they were a stranger and home at the same time? If you have, what did you do?" The next morning, the rain had stopped, but tension filled the air heavier than any storm. Lucas Alberb left early for a board meeting, his hands still wrapped in a clean bandage. He had thanked Maria Solis before leaving, but his voice carried something strange, too quiet to be indifference, too soft to be affection. Maria stood by the window long after he was gone. Seattle looked washed clean under the sunlight, the skyline glowing against the pale sky. It should have felt peaceful, but peace was a luxury she no longer trusted. Around noon, her phone buzzed. A notification popped up with her picture taken secretly at the gala. The headline read, "Who is Maria Solis? Secrets behind the millionaire's wife." Her Her stomach turned. She clicked the link. The article twisted her past into something ugly, claiming she had been arrested for theft at a shelter, that she had manipulated Lucas for money, that her marriage was a publicity stunt. Her hands trembled as she closed the page. She had expected judgment, but not this violence. When Lucas returned that evening, his face was unreadable. The moment he stepped inside, Maria knew he had seen the same article. "I suppose you have read it," she said before he could speak. "I have," he replied, setting his briefcase down. "They are digging. Someone from the board leaked it." "Then tell them the truth," she said. "Tell them it is not real, that this is all a deal." Lucas froze. The words hung in the air like a blade. "You want me to expose you? To end everything now?" "I want you to be free," she answered. He walked closer, his voice lowering. "Do you think freedom comes without consequence, Maria? The moment I tell them this marriage was fake, you will be the villain in every story. They will not destroy me, they will destroy you." Maria stared at him, anger and sadness colliding in her chest. "So you would rather I stay your convenient shield?" "I would rather you survive this storm," he said firmly. "Let me handle the board." But by the next morning, the damage had spread. Cameras camped outside the building. Rumors grew crueler. When Maria tried to leave for groceries, reporters blocked the door, shouting questions that cut deeper than insults. Inside the penthouse, she collapsed onto the couch, her breath shaky. She had lived through fires, hunger, loneliness, but never humiliation like this. Hours later, Lucas returned from the office with a storm in his eyes. "The board called for an emergency meeting," he said. "They are questioning my judgment. They want me to issue a statement: either I distance myself from you or I step down." Maria stood up, heart pounding. "Then step down." "You do not understand," he said sharply. "This company is all I have left of my father." "And what am I to you, Lucas?" she asked. "A charity project? A memory to honor him?" He looked away. The silence said enough. Maria's throat burned as she spoke again. "You built your life on control, but love, real love, does not live in cages." Close quote. Before he could answer, she walked past him, into the guest room, and shut the door. Lucas remained in the living room, staring at the skyline as the night swallowed it whole. For the first time in years, he did not know what to do. The world outside demanded a statement. The world inside demanded a heart. When dawn arrived, he dressed in silence and left for the meeting that would decide everything. At the boardroom table, cameras flashed, investors whispered, and the chairman asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Mr. Alberb, are you prepared to denounce your wife?" Lucas stood, adjusting his tie. His pulse thundered in his ears. Then he spoke clear, deliberate, unshaken. "No. If loyalty and compassion are mistakes, I choose to make them again. Every day." Gasps filled the room. He turned and walked out, leaving the company and his crown behind. Back at the penthouse, Maria watched the live broadcast through tears she had promised never to shed. In that moment, she realized something terrifying and beautiful. The contract had ended, but the story between them had just begun. The next few days unfolded in silence. The name Lucas Alberb vanished from business headlines and appeared instead in stories about downfall, defiance, and love. Some called him foolish. Others called him brave. But to Maria Solis, he was simply gone. He had not come home that night after the board meeting. The penthouse felt hollow without his footsteps, without the low hum of his voice filling the rooms. She could not decide whether to be relieved or afraid. Relief because the chaos might finally end. Fear because maybe she had been the reason he lost everything. 3 days later, a letter arrived, handwritten, not printed. The envelope bore no return address, only the familiar sharp strokes of his handwriting. "Maria, if you are reading this, it means I am not coming back to the company. I needed to remember who I was before the world told me who to be. Do not look for me. Just live. L.A." Her hands shook as she folded the letter. He was leaving her behind without goodbye, without closure. She thought she would be angry, but instead, she felt something worse: emptiness. Weeks passed. The media lost interest, the paparazzi moved on, and the storm around the fake marriage faded into memory. Yet Maria still could not leave Seattle. Something inside her refused to move on. One evening, while volunteering again at the rebuilt shelter, she overheard 2 workers talking. "Did you hear about the new foundation downtown? They are opening a community museum called the Hall of Kindness. It is funded by someone anonymous, but rumor says it is the Alberb family." Maria froze. A museum? Funded by Lucas? The next day, she followed the directions to the address. The building was small but beautiful, with glass walls reflecting the golden sunset. Over the entrance were 6 simple words. From the day she reminded me to live. Her heart caught in her throat. She stepped inside. The first thing she saw stopped her breath completely. Behind glass, perfectly framed, was the yellow post-it note she had once left on his laptop. Take a break. Below it was a short caption written in his handwriting. A small kindness that changed everything. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. The exhibit told a story through photographs, sketches, and short notes about empathy, second chances, and courage. It was not about business or power. It was about people, ordinary ones, who had done something kind when no one was watching. In the final room, sunlight poured through a skylight onto a single display. It was a photograph of her, taken candidly during the gala, looking away from the camera. Next to it, a small plaque read, "The woman who made me remember what real looks like." Maria turned slowly, and there he was. Lucas stood a few feet away, no longer in a suit, just a white shirt with sleeves rolled up. His eyes met hers, steady but softer than she remembered. "I told you not to look for me," he said quietly. "And you knew I would not listen," she replied. He smiled faintly. "This was supposed to be anonymous. I just wanted to build something that mattered, something real." "Kaz." "You did," she said, voice breaking. "But why show me this?" "Because it is yours too," he answered. "Every wall in this place exists because of that night under the rain." They stood there, surrounded by the quiet hum of the museum. The world outside moved on, but inside that glass room, time seemed to stop. Lucas took a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with 4 words. "You once saved me." He held it out. No contracts, no rules, just truth. Maria's tears fell freely now. "What if the world laughs again?" "Let them," he said. "We will give them something real to talk about." She nodded, her hand trembling as she reached for his. The moment their fingers touched, the past and the storm and all the noise faded away. Sometimes the greatest love stories do not begin with perfection, they begin with courage. The next few days unfolded in silence. The name Lucas Alberb vanished from business headlines and appeared instead in stories about downfall, defiance, and love. Some called him foolish, others called him brave. But to Maria Solis, he was simply gone. He had not come home that night after the board meeting. The penthouse felt hollow without his footsteps, without the low hum of his voice filling the rooms. She could not decide whether to be relieved or afraid. Relief because the chaos might finally end. Fear because maybe she had been the reason he lost everything. 3 days later, a letter arrived, handwritten, not printed. The envelope bore no return address, only the familiar sharp strokes of his handwriting. "Maria, if you are reading this, it means I am not coming back to the company. I needed to remember who I was before the world told me who to be. Do not look for me. Just live. L.A." Her hands shook as she folded the letter. He was leaving her behind without goodbye, without closure. She thought she would be angry, but instead she felt something worse: emptiness. Weeks passed. The media lost interest, the paparazzi moved on, and the storm around the fake marriage faded into memory. Yet Maria still could not leave Seattle. Something inside her refused to move on. One evening, while volunteering again at the rebuilt shelter, she overheard 2 workers talking. "Did you hear about the new foundation downtown? They are opening a community museum called the Hall of Kindness. It is funded by someone anonymous, but rumor says it is the Alberb family." Maria froze. A museum? Funded by Lucas? The next day, she followed the directions to the address. The building was small but beautiful, with glass walls reflecting the golden sunset. Over the entrance were 6 simple words. "From the day she reminded me to live." Her heart caught in her throat. She stepped inside. The first thing she saw stopped her breath completely. Behind glass, perfectly framed, was the yellow post-it note she had once left on his laptop. "Take a break." Below it was a short caption written in his handwriting. "A small kindness that changed everything." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. The exhibit told a story through photographs, sketches, and short notes about empathy, second chances, and courage. It was not about business or power. It was about people, ordinary ones, who had done something kind when no one was watching. In the final room, sunlight poured through a skylight onto a single display. It was a photograph of her, taken candidly during the gala, looking away from the camera. Next to it, a small plaque read, "The woman who made me remember what real looks like." Maria turned slowly, and there he was. Lucas stood a few feet away, no longer in a suit, just a white shirt with sleeves rolled up. His eyes met hers, steady but softer than she remembered. "I told you not to look for me," he said quietly. "And you knew I would not listen," she replied. He smiled faintly. "This was supposed to be anonymous. I just wanted to build something that mattered, something real." "You did?" she said, voice breaking. "But why show me this?" "Because it is yours too," he answered. "Every wall in this place exists because of that night under the rain." Quote. They stood there, surrounded by the quiet hum of the museum. The world outside moved on, but inside that glass room, time seemed to stop. Lucas took a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with 4 words. "You once saved me." He held it out. No contracts, no rules, just truth. Maria's tears fell freely now. "What if the world laughs again?" "Let them," he said. "We will give them something real to talk about." "What?" She nodded, her hand trembling as she reached for his. The moment their fingers touched, the past and the storm and all the noise faded away. Sometimes, the greatest love stories do not begin with perfection, they begin with courage.